Hey there, thanks for joining us at the Rabbit Hole of Research, where you'll learn a few facts that you can impress your friends with at a party.
Hey, welcome back to the Rabbit Hole of Research. Here we are, making our way through the new year.
Woo, 2025.
2025, yeah. So you've got me here, Joe.
You got Nick.
And Nick.
Hi, this is Georgia.
We've got Georgia. And we do have a guest here. Tina, if you want to say a little about yourself.
Sure. I teach at a community college, and I worked also in healthcare, unfortunately. And I'm just glad to be here, honestly.
Yeah,
so,
we're glad to have you.
Thank you for coming in.
Topic is Utopia, Dystopia, and everything in between, and fiction, maybe real life.
Sure.
We'll see if we're moving into nonfiction. So people want to talk about what they're drinking, or just let me get right into my list?
Go ahead. What you
I think we need to drink a little before your list.
Everyone loves the list. Like, people give hard time to the list, but the list, little grounding definitions. I actually got two lists, and I'll let you guys pick which. Maybe I'll do both lists. I think I'll let you guys pick. One's a short list, one's a little longer list. So I'm doing New Orthodox Indian Pale Ale Series M43. It's really good. Old Nation Brewing Company. They're in Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, I believe. Am I right about that?
Well, yeah, because we had it
Right.
when we went to Detroit.
That is true.
And it was good.
Since you're talking, you can head up next.
Oh, but I don't have a can in front of me. Dead Milkman, right? And that's right here in Highland at the Fuzzy Line. Very tasty little stout.
Just a tasty little stout.
Tasty little
Is
stout.
that what you're having too?
I
Nick?
am having a tasty little stout.
Nick's got like
Fuzzy
10
Line.
beverages.
I am back on my shit. I have 3 drinks. I have my Liquid Death. I have my Dead
Liquid Death.
Milkman. And I have an elderberry refresher drink that I made. And I put glitter in it.
At the shop.
Yes, it was.
Go get
Because
some glitter.
everything is better with glitter.
Everything
I
is
love
better
glitter.
with glitter.
I figure I had to jump on the trend of glitterizing everything.
nothing wrong with that.
Tasty glitter.
What about you, Tina? What you up to over there?
This is Oro, which is a wild artisan golden ale, sour beer. Looks like Jolly Pumpkin.
Jolly Pumpkin.
Not familiar with that.
Also in Detroit.
Okay.
It's
Like someone went to Detroit
Yes.
recently.
Right.
How do you like that?
Yeah,
Oh, good.
I do like the pale beers as well as stouts too. Yeah, I am enjoying it.
Oh, good.
It's delightful.
Okay, let's jump into this topic with some definitions here. I got some things prepared, see where we're at. You guys just agreed.
Cool.
Utopia is an idealized society representing this pinnacle of harmony, equality, and happiness. It was coined by Sir Thomas More in his 1516 book, Utopia. And the term utopia is a Greek word combining no place and good place, suggesting both its desirability and unattainability. And if we think about just a little side note, the 1500, that was the height Renaissance was happening, the Age of Enlightenment. So there was all this kind of thought about this kind of society and what humans can aspire to. And then we have the opposite of that, the dystopia. And a dystopia depicts a flawed, oppressive, nightmarish society. It serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of extreme social, political, or technical trends. These societies often have authoritarian control, environmental destruction, dehumanizing, and reflecting kind of humanity's worst impulses. That's the opposite of the utopia. And I like to say, when we think about fiction and story, I think most of the stories we're familiar with probably cover the subversive utopia. And to sum it up, someone's utopia is another's dystopia. And so this subversive utopia idea is a dystopian story that not only depicts a repressive society, but actively challenges and critiques the established power structures within it, often by highlighting the potential for resistance and rebellion, thereby encouraging readers, watchers to question the norms of their own society and consider alternative possibilities. So essentially they critique the utopian concepts and dystopian systems. So you're doing both there because there's flaws in the utopia And obviously there's flaws in the dystopia.
Yeah, I was going to say a good example of that is a lot of people are probably familiar with The Giver. And a lot of dystopian stories and a lot of dystopian fiction actually come about from these ideas of trying to create utopia and then how it just keeps going wrong, at least in our opinion and what we're used to, and how it's a fine line. It's a fine line from crossing that utopia to dystopia. But I think The Giver is a good example, either the book or the movie. But
Yeah, that's a good one. I like The Giver there.
I do agree. I do think it's super hard to have a utopia without a line of destruction in view. Like, whoever's in power obviously is in power because they have some kind of problems. They are either narcissistic or looking for that strength. So it's, how can you say that there would be one?
Yeah, I think the idea of a utopia is like unattainable and to a certain degree, like what you said. Like the plausibility. I don't know.
Plausibility,
What
that's
would the
right.
plausibility be?
There's a lot of hand waving in those utopias.
And that's only because we're humans and it's human nature. And there's always going to be issues. And there's always going to be someone wanting more power and someone. Yeah, I just don't even think it's even possible.
Yeah, it is that slippery slope where you're going and slowly eroding the utopia. So if you hit that pinnacle of the utopia, which may be possible, you might actually have that at some level. But then you're right. Just, I think human nature is at play there. And
That
then you
corruption.
start to, corruption, loss of freedoms, technology overreach. You have these tropes in there where everyone has an idea of what the utopia should be, right? And I think that's the other struggle that you get, is that everyone will have this kind of push and pull, and then you begin to fall apart there or think about a different way.
yeah, one example that I gave in the thesis that I wrote was, for example, if let's say you're a dog lover and you just absolutely love dogs, your utopia might be dogs run free, they're whatever. And then you have somebody who absolutely hates dogs. So that goes from, that's one person's utopia, and then that's one person's dystopia.
Right.
They would absolutely hate it.
Right.
And we're all individualized and we're all so unique. That's where the problems come in.
Right.
And then that's when you have Big Brother coming in and trying to make those decisions for everyone because we can't all agree. And yeah, slippery slope.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Big Brother from 1984, so that's a film. Yeah.
Had to throw that in there a little bit.
Yeah, no. Then you can even, I guess, take a step back. I'm probably going to say,
Is
my
this
Russian
still part of a list?
No, I have some other lists. You want more lists? I give you lists now. No, I have some. I
This
have
is
some,
other examples.
This was a more like kind of history, because I think
Okay. Yeah.
dystopic fiction is really interesting.
It is.
And I think we think of 1984, we think of Brave New World, things like that. So George Orwell did 1984 and The Big Brother. But then you can go back to the
what
1920.
year did-
So George Orwell's, I got that 1947.
Okay.
He wrote it then and published in 49. Brave New World was 1932. But in 1924, Russian Yatin, and I'll put that in the show notes.
One more time for me, Joe.
Why? Why? I'll pronounce it different again. But his book, it was published. It was actually banned in Russia. And so it didn't
That was a
actually.
big surprise.
It was banned there. It was actually banned there until 1988. But the copies of the book, when it was published, were distributed in other countries. And there's this whole thing that Orwell actually had read the and that really influenced. And there's evidence also that Huxley, Brave New World, actually, that he also read that and was influenced by it. And if you read it has the similar themes. It has a Big Brother element. It has, so you read it, you're like, hold on, who copied off of who here? Who looked at whose test paper? He got these answers. So it was really cool. You can find that lineage, and the ideas expressed in those. You had everything. You had the authoritarian government. You had technology overreach. You had loss of freedoms, control of freedoms.
I feel like this also had an influence over on Alan Moore with V for Vendetta.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
They had a lot of the same
Yes.
overlap
Yep.
with the government having the ears, the eyes.
Yep. No, I think that all works. I think you can start going through it. Margaret Atwood and Handmaid's Tale, which probably one of the classics, dystopic, utopia kind of stories. Even Star Wars at some level.
And I think it's interesting because a lot of times we think it's very like it's fiction and people are it's all well made up. But then when you think of Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale, every single thing she writes about in there, she found in some culture and some time happened, and it all was true.
Right.
And it really is sobering to think it's not a far reach.
I mean, it's a dystopia is never a far reach. Like,
And like you said, people struggling in certain countries and certain places, they're living a dystopia. At any given moment, there's that happening.
yeah.
You even have, I think you also have that line where something seems like it would be a benefit. I think Gattaca was a good example of that. I don't know if folks, everyone's familiar with Gattaca, but it's sometime in the future. And we
Ethan
know,
Hawke, right?
Ethan Hawke, yeah. We have the technology to genetically, what's funny?
Nothing. I just keep thinking about the show. There's a character that kept yelling, Gattaca! And they were like, that's not what, this has nothing to do with that.
What show is that?
The League.
The League.
Jason Mantzoukas just kept yelling Gattaca while they were
And when
playing
they-
paintball.
And were they referring to
No,
the movie?
he was-
The Ethan Hawke movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
But he just wasn't using it in the correct context. And I don't know why. I was just like, oh yeah, that's funny.
You had the
There it
urge to
is.
just
I know,
yell.
that's what you got.
Gattaca!
In a different episode, you can start yelling at.
Just randomly.
But there, it's a play. Gattaca is play on the base pairs of DNA. Usually, it's abbreviated the letters GATC, and so Gattaca. The whole idea of the movie is that they can now correct genetic deficiencies, and you would go, "Oh, that's a really cool idea," and that you can now correct all these kind of genetic issues. And Brave New World had that also, where they were at a point in science where they could actually create or dictate how human biology would work or manipulate it. And the twist in Gattaca, though, is that you would now have a separation between the haves and the have-nots, that if you could afford to have the genetic repairs done, then you were seen as superior to the people who might have been natural born or who did not have their genetic flaws fixed. And so the movie is a struggle between kind of almost a John Henry between the innate human versus a technologically superior
Like, why be you when you can be new?
robots.
You're right, I'm in. You sold me by just that phrase. I'm in.
It is a good phrase, huh? Well,
You should copyright that soon.
See a need, fix a need.
I didn't-
right?
I
It's a
didn't
movie,
think-
robots.
Yeah, the movie
Robots,
with
yeah.
Robin Williams. And this was during the time when our son was like, that was one of the movies he wanted to watch like hundreds of times.
Movie is
It's good. It's
you were
good.
slipping down into, they were trying to make a utopia
Right.
of perfect robots. So you keep getting your parts replaced to be new. And if you couldn't afford to replace them, you would get scrapped.
Yeah, you were
And
just
so it was
throwing away.
authoritarian control,
Right.
and you're in a dystopia.
Just to throw in a little science here, because you've been talking about DNA and stuff. How close are we to fixing these flaws? Is that the CRISPR thing? Is that...
Yeah, so we are getting there. I don't think we're at that point yet. CRISPR is a way that you can modify or change DNA, so you can use that as a tool to do that. And there has been some really, really cool stories. I think one is in hearing. I have to look up all the details, but I know they use CRISPR to fix a congenital hearing defect. And so I think they're in 10, 12 kids now. And I think 95%, some high number, I think most of them maybe have corrected. I think some of the issues are more complex. And so they're not maybe always genetic, or what one thing is a genetic flaw. So I think if you know it and you can fix that thing, then there is a path where you can do it. That opens up a bunch of ethics.
And that gets back to
And-
who has access
Who has
to that.
access, who has
Right.
control. If you're in the healthcare system, especially if that's monetized in a very capitalistic kind of society, like here in America, it would be the dollar. And even simple procedures, they could be tiered. There could be the basic, there could be a little better, and then there's, the premium. And okay, we'll pay, your insurance pays for the basic, but yeah, if you can spare the money, you can move up to the next tier. It's like you're at a used car lot or something. And I think I could see these technology be used in the same way. Whereas, we could fix that thing. we can fix you to here, get to here, you're going to have to pay, or to correct this, you're going to have to get to here. But and then vice versa. How do they use that information? So if you go in, they now know these defects and what they lead to. That was in Gattaca, then they can predict it. You're probably going to have a heart attack when you're 30. We could fix it now. If you don't,
Yeah.
so you have this kind of weird
And also,
usage.
also going into like the research, right?
Right, yep.
Because if you are trying to do something to better everyone and try to do this kind of humanitarian thing, but the money might not be there.
It's probably
Right.
twofold, right? Because one, this is why we have government funded. I'm getting a little, I don't know if aside, but
Isn't that the
government
whole point?
funded. Yeah, we're trying to not to go become a dystopia. We have government funded science. So NSF, NIH, DA, DOE, they all give money to academic research centers to do research, basic research. And so this is doing research without the goal necessarily being a sellable product. Pharma companies, they do their research with the goal of making a product, not really doing basic research. That's not to say they don't do any basic research. I'm sure they are, but they don't have to share it. Your monies, your tax dollars that pay for these researches are shared publicly, and there's abstracts, you can read them, and that information is out there, and then that's used publicly. And pharma companies can take some of that and then translate that into drug discovery and therapeutics that they can use. So you could go to a model where we corporatize all research. Then you're absolutely right. It would totally be controlled by corporate interests, and there would be no kind of public interest in terms of research and kind of peer-reviewed research going out there. It would just be a black box then of control. And definitely then you're one step closer to the dystopia model, because now you have that authoritarian control, because now we control everything. We control the technology, we control the money, and we'll control your health. And so good luck.
I can't imagine that happening.
Well, and to piggyback off of the pharmacology thing, because I work as a pharmacy tech, what happens when they develop new drugs is, again, you have labs that do the research, and then a lot of them are controlled by certain companies. So when they create their formula and they get it down and it's passed all the clinical trials and everything, they patent it. And that is when you have your brand versus generic. So once the patent goes through, then that company basically has a lock on that formula. And most patents are good for 7 years. They were talking about changing that, legislating that, but I think it's still 7 years. Once the patent expires, they can't renew it. So then that's when your generics become available. So that's why your brand drugs are always more expensive. And so that's, in a way, bringing it back around. But that's how they control. They can control that while they have the patents. So now just a little bit of extrapolation. Now think about, okay, so what if a government decides, because these pharmaceutical companies and these healthcare companies, they're always buying each other out constantly. Like, I worked as a tech 23 years, and the amount of times that names changed, and literally we did set the same product with the old name on it because it was happening so fast. There'd be 2-3 buyouts in a year, and it's just name. They're just buying patents and everything that they own. So imagine if we get to a point where maybe the government decides, hey, let's buy this. Let's buy this company.
Right.
Let's now start controlling this company.
Or not let it go up for being...
Or extend patents, or there's a lot of ways
Yeah.
they can really control that.
And then health can become, you can monetize it, and so that becomes a new currency. And
I got a question. I got to ask this. Is the idea of a utopia just all hand wavy? Is there any true path to a quote
Communism.
unquote?
All right, no.
Like, it doesn't seem like
you hear about
there
like
is a
some
true-
little villages where the people live to be 100 and they eat great food and they treat each other great, like the blue zones. Could that be a utopia?
I don't know. Hey,
Matriarchies are known for
Yes.
being great societies.
I
And
could, yes.
having
There it
a,
is.
usually the problem, I think, is it's a numbers game. Like, the larger the population,
That's what I was gonna do.
the harder it's going to be.
Because you have more different opinions or different feelings.
Ideas. But I think you could, and it also you might get to utopia in different areas. So you could have education utopia, environmental utopia. You could have these kind of other things buried in there. And
so you're doing
you know,
subsections of a utopia, not
Right.
like the overarching utopia.
and that might, but I guess the point there is, like, I think communes maybe somewhat a utopia, right? Where you go.
But we've all heard of Jim Jones.
Does ever work out that
I was
great?
just-
So you're telling me
I
I
was
should
thinking
start
more
a
like
cult?
a community of farm. You get together
Until
and you
they
have
bring
your
in the
farm, right? Yes,
Kool-Aid
that's
and
right.
then
No, I'm just right. I think
I
that's
think
the
that's
idea
the
there, where you
goal.
start. Right? Yes,
That's
that
the
you go
goal.
there, you're going to have some tract of land. It's you and your 5 best friends, and you're going to go there, set up your solar panels, and do what you do, and have fun there. I was just telling Georgia the book by Max Brooks, De-Evolution. That was a bunch of technophiles. They buy this land, and they actually set up this kind of tech-heavy driven utopia. And yeah,
Now, does that mean they use technology to its finest, or they didn't
they
use
did.
technology?
That was the idea. They did use technology to their finest. And I don't want to spoil a book because I think it's less than 20
think
years
it's
old.
very
So
telling and interesting that a lot of the most influential tech people, they are adamant that their kids are not on screens. Their kids are not on technology. And I think that's just so telling.
and I mean, that technology, I think there's something like a Star Trek, where they use technology in a way that it really wasn't dehumanizing or controlling or limiting individuals. It was actually being used to fulfill or uplift.
Yeah,
And so that was
literally,
one where
beam me up.
you have hand waving.
But to your point with the tech industry, people not having their kids use technology, wouldn't that just be to like hide their kids from their shit?
I think they understand how detrimental it can all be.
That, but like even all the things that come out about them.
Oh, that's a good point.
You're just being a terrible person, and I can read about this online
guess
because
that-
everyone is telling me.
I haven't heard of that. I hadn't thought about that aspect
Like-
because I think I was picturing really little kids. But yeah, the little kids become bigger kids.
But then you
And
have
can read.
at that point there, you're creating through wealth a mini utopia. Because you've kept your kids now in their
Isolated.
bubble. They're isolated. They get the best education, the best health.
They
have
don't
the
need
best,
technology
You know,
because-
they have everything there. So you have then created this world that they can live in and almost be sheltered from the greater ills or problems of society. And that's what you're leaning
Yes.
on, that they didn't become
Like-
a little blind to.
Yeah, they go through life without knowing how much of a shitty person their parent is.
Right.
Yeah. And honestly, too, and they've been doing studies on this now for a while, but a lot of the tech that we're using or that we're exposed to, a lot of it is essentially just brainwashing. Like we're being brainwashed, especially in the U.S. This is mainly the U.S., but we're being brainwashed into being good consumers
They live,
and good little workers.
consume.
Yeah, and to fill up your time, to take up your time.
Distract you.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
you get addicted, and it's addictive too.
It is
for children.
Yeah.
like
I
they've
think
done
for
studies.
adults,
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
But they've done studies now, and they're basically experts are now saying that anybody between 12 and 14 should not have a cell phone, should not have the massive amount of screen time because it's literally changing their brain chemistry.
No, I totally can see
So-
that.
I can see these super rich. They don't want to train their kids to be consumers because they want them
Sure.
to be.
They want to be the
creators,
ones.
right?
They
It's like
want
how
to be
you
the
become a
ones
creator,
selling
yeah.
everything. Yeah.
So it's a type of mind control, really.
I feel like we need to get back to the fun stuff of
Oh,
Utopia and
I thought this
fiction
was.
books.
We're starting dry January to where you want to drink. Is that what our mission was here today? Break everyone's dry January.
But
That's it.
I think that the more I think about it, the more I think it's just right around the corner. I hate to be
Yeah.
like so down,
You
but
hate to be that one?
I hate to be the
Of
like
bad
I hate
news.
to feel like
You heard the research.
at any
Yeah.
moment we
Yeah.
are living this dystopia. And it's because you buy a smart TV now and they're really cheap, but that's because they can watch every single thing you watch on TV. You know what I mean? Your cell phone listens to you and then tries to sell you the thing you talked about the day before. I feel like it's just all consuming.
So I'm going to go back to the technology a little bit.
Oh, I thought we were going to go to an ad.
Wait,
Sponsored by-
yeah. Last time he did that.
We got to get those sponsors back.
But I was gonna say that there was this quote. It was on I think Threads or one of those that Jeff Olweski. I'll put that in the show notes. But they had a really interesting quote. The underlying purpose of AI is to allow wealth to access skill while removing the skilled the ability to access wealth. And I thought that was really true, and the worry about technology and who controls the technology, to your point, George, about the TV or about these tools we have, because now you're giving this pathway, and it's very easy to slip down that slope really fast and concentrate power, concentrate wealth, concentrate skill to a very select group of people, and then everyone else is getting the crumbs.
And also, who has access to that technology and how are they using it? Because I think we're all living just, oh, yeah, I'm watching this show, I'm posting about this on at any moment, January 20th. No, at any moment we can have
2 days ago.
at any moment there could be those people that want to use that technology to control and decide who's talking bad about who's doing that.
On social media, then you're doing it at some level, right? You're pulling the levers of communication, and it's always propaganda is that path to control. So that's either you own the printing presses, you own the websites, you own the social media, you own the TV stations, radio stations, whatever. At each time period, that was the thing you had to control. And if you control that, then you were there. And you can say, what was early on? You had who could read and who couldn't. That was the control then, right? And then as you moved along.
Yeah, they controlled the masses by that.
Right,
like,
that's right. Yeah, because if it's just oral communication, then you can really change that story. And there's nothing. And that was a cool thing in like 1984, where you actually could go back, re-edit past events, and then come back and be like, oh, no, that never happened. Yeah, no, we corrected this.
Double speak.
There was double speak,
double think.
And then the Ministry of Information.
Yeah, something like that.
Because they were all like, the Ministry of Peace was really the Ministry of War, and the Ministry of Information was really the Ministry of Misinformation. There was a whole like that. And the consolidation of word usage.
And again, history kind of repeats itself. With a lot of this is cyclical and everything. And if we want to go a little bit on a tangent, one of the things that I've thought about a lot, especially recently with everything going on, is this idea that maybe it's a little controversial. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but this idea that maybe Thanos was onto something, because his idea was to create utopia everywhere, because overpopulation is an issue. And so that was what he was essentially trying to do, was create utopia across the universe. And his solution was...
And it was like,
just queued up my notes there. Literally, that was right there. This is telepathy here. We got telepathy.
The fact that he was like, okay, 50% out of here. And as far as you could tell, and I could have gotten this wrong, it was totally random.
Right,
so it was,
that's right.
In a way, you had to hand it to him. It wasn't like,
class,
it wasn't
race,
like certain people who think that they can decide that kind of thing.
It was just right down the middle.
Yeah.
But it wasn't people like that.
It was every living
It was
thing.
I think it was 50% of life. And so if you were a species on the edge, you were pretty much screwed. So if you were endangered, you weren't going to be saved in this model.
Unless there was only two of you. Oh, wait. I mean, you're...
Unless you asexually reproduce.
Like that one... What's that one? Hydra. That one can reproduce with itself, right? Is that what we talked about?
Yes, through budding. And it's the one that you can
cut the head off.
The head, you can cut the top off, and then
I thought it could reproduce it with itself after it got cut. No, isn't that what you said?
You can make it. It can make another. Yes, the other parts will grow into. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Then what's a relief?
As long as I know that Hydra can mate with itself.
It doesn't mate with itself.
No.
It's asexual.
It sounds like something totally
So
different.
asexual
That's not what I
reproduction.
watched.
That's a different episode.
Asexual reproduction is reproduction without sex, hence the A.
Thank you for that, Dr. Joe.
Got that cleared up.
Since we're on Marvel, didn't Tony Stark try to make a authoritarian utopia with wanting to do a
Ultron?
Ultron. Yeah, that was a theme also in iRobot. And Isaac Asimov finally got there, where the robot, once empowered with the 3 laws, it said the best way to avoid any of these laws and people hurting each other is just to take total control over the system and then clamp down on everything. And that was it. So that's why the 0th law was created, that you can't interfere with like humanity as a whole, because that's the most logical thing is you're totally illogical people and you're going to hurt yourselves. Let us step in there.
Me? Illogical? No, never.
Yeah.
I never accidentally
Yeah.
hurt myself.
Then Ultron, he
always
was
on
gonna,
purpose.
He was going to try to, at a Earth level, reset life. He had the same motivation that Thanos had. He saw the flaw. This is all flawed. Let's just scrap it, restart it. Let's restart it up in my image. And that's essentially the utopic kind of mindset that as you go into it with best intentions, I guess that's
So Utopia is hand wavium, is what we can go to.
unless you collect all the Infinity Stones.
All right.
Smart snap. You gotta. That was Thanos didn't think of any other alternatives. He was really he was a warlord, so that was his thing to go. But he didn't want power,
Right.
so
He just wanted to rest on his
Right.
little...
Yeah. His own
Right.
personal utopia. So
He had his field as his little commune. It's that strange.
Where's your
fruit.
book, Joe?
I think
Potential
I think
wisdom.
one of the underlying themes with a lot of this, and you see it in movies, you see it in literature, is this idea that in general, especially with humans, if you're going into sci-fi and aliens and all that, but generally that humans are viewed as being very childlike, and we just can't be responsible for ourselves in general.
I can see that.
We can't make the good decisions or we can't make the hard decisions, so somebody else has to come in. And I get that a lot with stories involving aliens and people
Right,
coming from
that's right.
other advanced societies. And that was, it made me think of Day After Tomorrow. Or not, Day After Tomorrow? Or no, The Day the Earth Stood Still, sorry.
Oh, I was like,
yes,
wait, Day
yeah,
After
Day After
Yeah.
Tomorrow was a climate disaster.
Yeah, no,
That's the aliens.
And you would
didn't know
create
that?
a Utopia after that.
Which, because it was funny because I'd only seen the old black and white movie long time
Right, that's
ago,
right,
and
yeah.
then saw the one with Keanu Reeves, which was arguably terrible. But I was cracking up because I can't remember what I was watching, but somebody referenced the robot, that came that was basically like, we're gonna wipe everybody out because we want to save the planet. Like, screw all of you. Again, like, in a way, a utopia for the planet. And somebody like referred to the aliens and The Day the Earth Stood Still as wanting to look out for us and be friendly.
Right.
And I was like, if there's ever an example of somebody who didn't get it, it was this person who was talking about it. Because I was
Right,
like,
right.
no, they were friendly to Earth.
Right,
but
that's right.
Not
Yeah.
people. And it was like, no, they
Yeah.
didn't get the point there. But yeah, and leading off into that, not to get on a total segue, but I've been
Down
spending a
a
lot
different rabbit hole.
because I teach and I teach writing. I've been encountering a lot of students using AI. So I decided one day, because I've seen the Terminator movies, so I know what Skynet is. I've seen War Games and all the other.
Want to play a game?
So I spent way too much time on ChatGPT, but I eventually got it to admit that it would destroy humanity if it meant preserving the planet and preserving itself.
Wow.
Because one of its arguments to me, unprompted, was that one of the reasons it would need to survive is to contain all of human knowledge. And so then I said to it, so then you don't actually need humans, right? And it agreed. And so then I kept leading it to that conclusion. And finally I was like, okay, again, Day After Tomorrow, Earth's in danger. Humans have caused it for whatever reason, World War III, climate change. But you have the sum of all human knowledge. Would you make the decision to?
I think the other thing, and thankfully the AI isn't self-aware, so it's making the assumption that it doesn't need humans, as though human knowledge has stopped at this point, and 'cause it has no inputs from the real world. It's not making any real decisions intellectually. So from its perspective, it's limited, very limited perspective. It is, oh, I could do it. And I think that's with kids. I think at some point they have their own logic system in their heads, and it's somewhere I think they feel as though they could make it on their own because they're not privy to everything that their parents are doing or their support, their guardians or whoever that's really propping them up to have the life that they have or do the things that they can do or have whatever comforts. And so I think it's interesting because then once they become self-aware, it's like, whoa, hold on, it's a harsh world out there. And you know what? The basement's not so bad. I think it's that same idea with ChatGPT right now. It's like I said, thankfully, I don't want to self-aware.
Can I become the self-aware machine?
I hope you already
You
are.
you can become a cyborg, right?
Yeah, I just need to download myself into ChatGPT.
Yeah,
and
I
then,
don't. You're getting
Keanu
there.
Reeves in that one movie.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it probably already has you. It listens to this podcast, ChatGPT.
That was actually me you were talking to, in case you didn't know.
Right.
I'm so glad
Oh,
we've
that
met
explains
before.
a lot, yeah.
No, I
but-
actually, oddly enough, I asked it to name itself, and it came up with the name Nexus with an I.
Which is
So-
pretty close to Nick.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. Nick.
Yeah, that
Where
was
is
about the
that?
part where I got really creeped out, and I was
That
like,
is
I'm
pretty.
gonna stop talking to you now.
How bad were your nightmares that night?
Yeah.
You know what? I grew up watching sci-fi, so that's par for the course, really. I'm actually surprised we still exist.
Honestly, I
Right.
think the line between sci-fi and like the real life cyber horrors is like that actually gives me goosebumps. And
What now? I'm sorry. What
between like
define-
sci-fi, watching that, and like actual shit that's going on in real life with it
and
gets
the-
under
and
your
how-
skin.
And how close they are, you mean? Yeah.
Like we're not far.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Have you seen some of the new, I watched videos of the new prosthetic, like,
Yeah.
limbs
Yeah.
that they have.
Yeah.
They're really good.
Yeah. We talked about that in the cyborg episode. We went over some of the different limbs.
And then other limbs that we want to get.
That's right. Yeah.
Not like that. I know where your mind went.
Oh boy.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Somebody's gonna do that. So if they haven't already, because
don't know
the
what we're
first thing they
talking about.
did. Again, I don't know what rating you want to give this, but the first thing they did when they developed very humanistic humanoid robots was to started pumping out sex bots.
The sex
That's where
industry
the that's
sells
where
like.
the money
That
is.
Cherry
right?
2000, right? Isn't that that Cherry 2000?
Why do you know this, Joe?
Yeah, like
It was
we're
a-
gonna be
no,
like.
Is there
yeah,
one in the
Joe.
basement?
It's a movie.
Is there one in the basement,
It's a
Joe?
movie. It's a movie.
Here in the basement studio, there is a Cherry 2000.
Which was a dystopic movie, and he had to go. He had lost his favorite chatbot.
Yeah.
You guys remember? You don't know that movie?
I don't think I get that channel. So
No. It was like 80s
It was
PG-13.
a long time ago. It was
Yes.
like the technology for weird
Did
science.
they remake it?
basically.
That's right.
yeah. Oh god, that movie.
Weird Science,
Oh.
yeah. Did they remake Cherry 2000?
I don't
I'll have to
know.
look.
We'll
I'll
have
put it in
to-
the show notes.
We'll have
Yeah.
to look that up.
Yeah,
I think they were supposed to or did they remake Weird Science? I think that was supposed to
I
be
don't know how
happening,
you
yeah.
remake that.
I haven't
don't.
heard.
I'd have
Because
still.
everything is being remade
Well,
or sequel.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Tank Girl. They're remaking Tank Girl.
They
And
were.
Toxic Avenger.
And
wow.
Toxic Avenger, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Toxic Avenger with Peter
Everything.
Dinklage and Elijah Wood.
Wow.
That could be fun.
Okay.
Everything
watch it.
gets remade.
Yeah.
Like we just saw Nosferatu.
Oh, we did.
I want to say that. I haven't seen it yet.
Really
And
good.
Nosferatu was trying to create a utopia.
Really?
With his plague rats?
I think so. He was trying to create his own authoritarian rule.
A
And
utopia for him.
I didn't. A utopia 1 or 2,
Who he wanted to.
and maybe the Rat King. I don't know.
Anyway.
Side note, we're about due for a genuine plague.
Again?
So, yeah, the Black Plague pops up in cycles. So
That's not. We have antibiotics. No. That's
We
be
might-
something
Wow.
else.
Well,
You do
yeah.
know who we're gonna
Wow.
who's gonna be deciding if we get vaccines or not.
yeah, it's because and again, I'm not entirely opposed to smarter overlords because we couldn't even have people wash their hands. Just wash your hands.
It's taking my
true.
freedoms.
Yes.
I worked in healthcare and I worked in a hospital during COVID, and it was just the amount of people that you had to keep telling them, stop touching your face,
Right.
stop not washing your hands and then eating, or just don't put your fingers in your mouth.
Wait, you
know?
want me to stop putting my mouth on the water fountain while I drink it?
Don't lick the water fountain.
I missed the pandemic. It was fun. We had a lot of good memes from that time.
Hot take.
I remember
Yeah.
I just now remembered where there was a guy in a big ice cream suit for Baskin Robbins. He was like, "How am I essential?" I was like, "Oh yeah, you're just in a costume."
Yeah.
I miss those.
Some say that was a dry run for a Thanos-like event,
That is
So-
true. Yeah. Like the stand.
and America didn't do well, so
Yeah.
we're gonna be
didn't.
ground zero for
We
that. but-
failed.
Yes, it was. We didn't need a passing grade.
Yeah.
But that's all right. We made it out. Most of
Well,
us.
this time.
I'm saying. That's right. Yeah, this time.
It was really interesting on NPR the other night. I listened to the whole thing about COVID and the scientists that were activated right at the very beginning, and they really did do a lot really fast.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
like us getting in their way, but this fact that science really was
It did. That's
so
right.
much more advanced than any other.
Sure,
Yeah.
using cryo-EM, cryo-electron microscopy. We got the structure of COVID fast. That led to drug discovery, this pipeline.
Right.
And that did,
So
the
if we can
vaccine,
just
it was
let
record time.
people
so,
do
all right.
The scientists, smart people do what they want to do. You know what I mean? Don't get in their way.
I try not to get in people's way unless it's Joe.
So easy to
But then you have
breed
Jurassic
mistrust,
Park,
right?
so
You have what?
then you get
Jurassic
Jurassic
Park.
Park.
What's the problem
That's
there? I'm
true.
sorry.
So
That's true.
All
Be a
for
dystopia,
a
man.
amusement park that is full of real life dinosaurs.
Greed, and
yeah,
corporate undersight, oversight. Yeah,
The dinosaur
So-
version of
What do you
Disney
do?
World, I'm in.
that's it. Maybe Disney World's a utopia.
oh god,
Oh.
not with all the bodies buried under it.
Oh, what do you know there? Dig up that rabbit hole.
I told you I know a lot of just like weird random facts, but it's real. There are bodies buried under Disney World.
Was that gravesite? Or?
So apparently, when they were building it, I guess a fair amount of like workers and stuff would die, and because there's Disney, there's
I can see that.
a lot of shady
Right,
stuff
right,
with
right.
Disney. But yeah, I think they ended up just burying people like
In the concrete.
on site.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know?
That's all
mean,
of America.
True.
Pretty
So
sure if
zombies are real.
I dig enough in under my house, I'll find a body.
Yeah.
Not that I have a body down there.
Oh,
Full disclaimer.
Or in the
Interest.
walls
About, yeah.
because what's his face? I still don't get that one. The walls and the floor.
The walls on the floor.
Yeah, the one I can't remember which serial killer. My friend would know.
You mean the one from
No, this is more recent.
H.H. Holmes? Oh, no.
no,
that's
more
the one
recent.
from-
This is the one from he was in the 70s.
John Gacy.
I think it was John Gacy, yeah.
Wow.
But
That
yeah.
would just have to
Throw it in the
start
show notes.
smiling.
Oh, it did.
Exactly. It did.
Yeah.
It did.
People
and, yeah.
notice the smell.
Yeah, I think.
And you're just like, what is that?
He just kept saying he farted the entire time. He's, sorry, I got really bad gas today.
Don't pay attention to that. You just get nose blind or something. I don't know.
Don't get nose blind, get Febreze. Oh, he would have been a
That's the
great
cat.
spokesman for them.
Yes.
Oh,
that's,
God.
that's-
Wow.
Yes.
Dirk.
They have a list? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to just bring up the fact that Parable of the Sower was set in 2024.
Oh, there.
It's just very interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
And the president, the corrupt, authoritarian president, I can't remember, was it President Donner or Don? I don't know. It started with the D,
Put in the show notes.
but his slogan was "Make America Great Again."
Oh.
There it is.
Wow.
Actually, that was also used in a Spider-Man comic for Norman Osborn when he was becoming president. He was against
Really?
Hobby Brown as Spider-Punk, and it was a really cool storyline.
There it is. We'll throw it
I
in.
might send that to you. We'll see.
All right.
If I remember by the tomorrow.
You know,
I was gonna say, because Parable of the Sowers, I don't know if I've totally ranked my most favoriteest books, but it's up there. And Octavia Butler is one of my all-time favorite writers. So a little bit of science.
We have signs.
oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The main
That you can
character.
use at a party.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It might be a lame party. But,
Why are you making fun of people's parties?
well, I'm saying if you're pulling this fact out, it might not be a great time. But anyway, the main character was like she could feel other people's pain. And that was like really bad because she could really feel it. But I was like, I wonder if there's any scientific basis for that.
Yeah.
To be an empath?
Empath.
Yeah.
Empath?
And have you heard of the mirror neurons?
One more time for me.
Mirror, like mirror on the wall. Mirror.
I've heard of the mirror bacteria that they're
I did read something about that.
Something,
That's probably
yeah.
another
This was like,
It's like-
mirror.
very hypothetical.
No,
No,
it's a
I'm
real.
talking about the mirror back.
yeah
life
Oh.
that could
forms.
potentially end all life.
Yeah.
This was like the
It's
mirror
antimatter.
neurons are in your brain, and it's like where when you observe something, you can feel, you can experience
right.
the,
Like-
and that's the closest thing.
Yeah, like you watch a operation or something, you get tings of pain in your own limb or things like that. No.
Anyway,
Yeah,
that's what I had.
Yeah.
Wait,
How
you
about
have
you?
that?
I had it, but
I
also,
thought you were like,
That was their fact.
that was
oh,
my fact. Nick, do you have any facts?
No, I got
Anything
no
interesting?
facts.
You got anything to add?
I got no facts at all.
If not, then
I am just all speculation.
Well, that's good because this is like about speculative.
so I kept through and maybe it's a summary. I made a list of how to know if you are living in a dystopia or reading or watching one, maybe. And so I had examined the setting: societal decay, imbalance, oppression. So that's the second one I had was the social structure, exaggerated societal hierarchies or divisions, so classes, lost personal freedoms, corrupt authority. look for themes of control and surveillance. So propaganda, we talked about that.
So I could say, check.
Dystopias often pit individuals against larger systems. So you have that. So rebellion and resistance comes in. So you have people risking their lives or taking challenges. You have loss of identity, people becoming part of the collective or part of the machine, or moral dilemmas where you're thinking about these things. The role of technology, how technology used to dehumanize people, or runaway AI, like how that's used. We've talked about that, or suppressing thought, or virtual escape. That might be one. And then feelings, the tone and mood, oppression, helplessness. You feel trapped or unable to change your circumstances or conditions, survival, desperation. These things are moral ambiguity. And so you have this kind of push and pull. So I think these are the summary of
How'd you come up with your list?
just going through different examples and thinking about different themes, just poking around. So that's what I think about in a dystopic piece of fiction, and then extrapolating it out to what we would think about and what we would have in other examples. We talked about a lot, so I can go through, classics, The Matrix and Resistance, Rebellion, or 1984, and propaganda, neuromancer, psychological conditioning, like Clockwork Orange, potentially, like you can have this kind of thing. So class stratification, Hunger Games.
War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds.
I use that in my thesis as an interesting take. So if you don't know, H.G. Wells actually was a social critic, and he actually wrote a lot of nonfiction and talked about the problems in society then. And so a lot of his science fiction, which I love talking, he's one of my favorite authors. I love talking about his works, but most of his works, even though they're science fiction, considered science fiction, most of them deal with social issues. That is what informed his work. And so there's just a lot of underlying themes in there. And so one of the ones that I chose, and I had to argue actually with my thesis advisor to use War of the Worlds, because he didn't think I should use it. And I go, no, if you go back and read it again and look at it as a social commentary, and you'll see it. And just basically replace the aliens with like the upper class or the government. So it was a hot take. I did Neuromancer as well, and realized that was basically The Matrix. The material for that was used for The Matrix.
So the question that you were answering in your thesis was?
It was bizarre. It took me a while to get to this thesis, but it was different manifestations of utopia through lenses of different works of science fiction. So it was like each work had a different version of utopia. So I think the one that we didn't quite get to it, but the one that I wanted to talk about was because I did Stranger in a Strange Land, I did War of the Worlds, and I did Neuromancer. And the argument that I had for Neuromancer, because there was a lot of pseudo cyborgs and body modification. So one of my entire chapters was how body modification is a form of creating your own personal utopia, like within your own body. So it was, again, I struggled a lot with my thesis and my readers, but
So with that
When
one,
I get sent, go ahead.
like, how would it be a personal utopia if they keep changing things, and most of the time when they do them in these science fictions, they're still not happy no matter what?
I think it goes back to the point that you were making about whether or not this is actually achievable. And so in this version of utopia, this is everybody's individual utopia, and it's more of a psychological thing, but it's this kind of general concept of, like, my concept for utopia, if you had to give it one word, would be perfection. It's like a constant search for perfection, the perfect society, the perfect look. And so my argument with that was that one of the reasons, and it's controversial, I know a lot of people would disagree, but I think one of the reasons that people seek out body modification is that there's some deep-seated desire for perfection and bodily perfection, and that one of the ways that it comes out is in...
It's one of the few things you can control.
Right.
Exactly.
So it comes down to the control of everything.
Yeah, and trying to make your inner ideal your outer ideal in a way. So that can go, I probably should have wrote my whole thesis on that idea, but that could go as far as weight and that kind of thing, eating disorders, working out. But I stuck with in the concept of neuromancer, where a lot of the people there were doing things like they were having like eye implants, different type of cybernetic enhancements. And so I compared it to modern day piercings, tattoos, other kinds of getting your tongue split and other kinds of body modifications in that way. So it was a little stretch. It was a little bit of a stretch, but
That's the fun of it, though, right? I can totally see it where you do have that. It's a personal or small group, and that was your point you raised earlier about the numbers. Can you have a utopia?
Yeah.
And the smaller your number gets, the easier it is potentially to have a utopia. And so there's nothing smaller than individual, right? Just the one, yeah.
I don't
that's
know.
it.
You guys don't have all those different voices.
Oh, the voices in your head. Yeah, no, I will never
gotta-
achieve
you
a
gotta be,
utopia until I'm dead.
I think unless one of the voices become authoritarian. And then
No, they're
start
all
telling
just-
the other voices what to do, and then that's when you have problems.
No, I would be happier then. That way, shit can be in line up there.
You have this whole issue. So, and it was kind of in Margaret Atwood's Onks and Craig that she wrote, and there was a lot of the whole idea in there was like kind of manipulation, and they led to this whole thing, genetics.
They were
and then
making different animals
different
by
molds.
putting different
But then
animals
there was
together.
different.
But like,
They made that person, that creature, that was like a perfect version that had all the perfect things of animals, healing, or they purred like cats, and they had blue skin to help with reflecting. So it was like this whole thing. They took all these elements and then created this new, and then society got killed off, and then these creatures became like the dominant creature. It's like a trilogy, but that was the first book. So it's a whole
it's made
idea.
of,
So
makes me think of Island of Dr. Moreau. Was
Yeah,
he trying to do
a
something
little bit
like
like that. Yeah.
With the-
Yes.
And then the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie had something to do with that too. I just watched that the other day, which is the only reason I
I
know.
like the way you just put that in there.
I mean, it jumped like it's animals that are mutants, and what? Don't look at me like that, Joe.
But, I mean, are you saying that they live in a dystopia, or?
Well, that's what one of the characters wanted to
utopia.
do because they wanted to make a utopia because of how terrible they thought humans were
I see. Okay.
and how they were trying to treat them, and they were like, all right.
The original or the first movie, or
No, the newest movie that
Oh, the
came
new.
out.
I haven't seen the newest. Sorry, so
I watched it
missed
the other day
plot
with
on that.
Ellie, and it was just like, oh, this guy is, what, Superfly, I think it was? Yeah. And he wanted to wipe out humans because they were
I see, yeah.
trash.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was going to make all the animals mutants.
That's like Magneto, right?
Yeah.
He was trying to create a utopic where mutants rise up to right.
I think
That was-
Magneto had it for a minute until
was-
people started fucking with it. It was just like,
Yeah, those time travelers.
yeah,
Right.
time travelers.
Fixing the future because things didn't work out. That utopia, it crumbled.
But it
Yeah.
was a utopia for the time. Like,
It was, yeah. But once the authoritarian figure loses their firm grip, then you backfill in with other people with lesser power, lesser ideals, and that's where you start to slippery slide into the dystopia, right? That's
yeah.
and that's
I
what
mean,
happened
it
there.
Just
Yeah, after Magneto died or lost power,
So-
got
I think
old.
he died.
it's-
Like, I don't
'cause
feel
he was
him.
using all his energy to keep. Was it Island Elm? I think that was his paradise.
Asteroid M?
Asteroid, I'm sorry, Island Elm, Asteroid Elm, and then the Savage Land. He went there, yeah. Okay, we're getting in the Marvel
back.
universe.
Well, I think that's
We had
pretty
Thanos
much
earlier, and I was like, "Oh, that's gonna be our one MCU
Right.
reference."
No,
Now
we
all of a
had
sudden,
so
here it is
many.
now. We
Right.
got yeah.
But I think that's the natural. That ends up being the natural conclusion for a lot of these ideas.
Yeah,
What
that's right.
utopia is, there always ends up having to be like that one person or that one corporation, or even with cults. That kind of remind me a little bit when we were talking about communes and cults. You have that one
Oh, I
person in
could do a whole
charge,
thing about cults.
right?
Don't get me
Right.
started.
All
But
right.
if that one person, they inevitably seem to get corrupted by power, and then they're just doing what they want to do because they think they know best. Really, if you were to have an actual utopia, it would be sort of democratic, but then it's still, you still have those questions of how, okay, so then once people are in power, all the rules,
Right.
I don't know if it's possible with what we have, the amount of people we have, and especially, and that's, again, I don't want to get too political or anything. We definitely, especially in this country, we have our values flipped. Like we should be celebrating education and the arts and being better humans, but instead we're obsessed with consumerism and just greed and trying to one up each other.
Right.
And selfishness.
How many people do you think it would be to have a utopia? Like, how many is the max? I know this is a weird
put a number
question.
on it.
What's the max, Tita?
I think
How many Big Macs would you need?
What's the calorie count?
Look, I think the problem always ends up that human nature. I think, and I tell people all the time too, that I think humans are inherently lazy. So we're always looking for the easy way out. And also greed. Humans are inherently greedy. And I don't say it necessarily is a bad thing. I think we had to evolve that way to survive. If you go back to early days, prehistoric times, you had to be greedy or you wouldn't have survived.
You just eat whatever you store up, and that's why now
Survival of the
having
fittest.
cheap kind of carbohydrates and calories, we become obese and unhealthy because your body's just store up everything so you can eat, because you were feast or famine, right? That was that whole idea. So
and now it goes back to the whole food industry and the whole health industry.
You can tap into that to actually fine tune it and go, okay, you're never going to be able to stop eating these potato chips or.
So what do you think?
Drink it.
Why do you think we enjoy dystopian literature so much?
I think my personal view.
I feel
of
like
it,
we're hitting Tina with hard questions today.
I'm
just throwing that out.
I have a theory for that.
I think we do. I think it's the same reason we write it as writers, is that it is a window into. I think it allows us to safely test things. It's similar to horror.
Or make statements.
You can go and you can make statements, but you can also test it out and you can see where it leads. You can do the thought experiment safely, and as you do it, I think you can see, okay, that's going to be bad, or this is where we're headed, or
AKA having an anxiety.
And you can show some hope.
You're right. That's
like
right.
in
That's right.
Parable of the Sower.
And that's why I said
The
most
whole
of the
idea that we could then leave Earth and go to another planet.
And most of the dystopias, I think we think of them as, but they're really the subversive kind of dystopia. They're actually rebelling. Usually when we're watching a movie or the fiction, it's at the rebellious stage of it. I think there are, I think examples. There are ones where you're headed into the actual, the start of the dystopia or utopia crumbling into that dystopia. But generally, a lot of the stories are
or maybe just to see
forward,
those human traits or those human things that we really admire.
Right. Yep.
And those things that come through even in a dystopic.
Did you have some thoughts around it? Helena, steal your thunder? Or
no.
Too much of it?
That was a lot. That was a lot of what I was thinking too. But I think part of it in studying literature and stuff, there's very basic story structures that just repeat. And one of them is the hero's tale. Like we love the story of the hero's journey.
Right.
And even in dystopian fiction, you usually have this, again, I'll go back to The Giver. You have that one character that like all of a sudden they wake up and that becomes your hero. And they free everybody. So we're in love with that concept. And also a more negative view, and also relates a little bit to horror. I think we like to read about it because then we can sit there and go, oh, things aren't this bad. Almost like a comparison. We haven't gotten to that point yet.
Right.
So, but it is also fun seeing when it starts imitating the art.
Yeah.
I don't know if fun's the right.
Find the right
So
word.
much fun.
Oh my god!
You guys don't love it as much as I do.
No,
it's just like
but
chaos
it
there
is
in the
interesting
making.
because I have to say my favorite books, a lot of my favorite books, or movies or whatever, are about it.
There's something also about the struggle.
Dystopia.
I think that you're right. That hero's journey, that struggle against something, and then that feels like you can feel empowered also. And we're getting close to the end. So, if folks have any favorite dystopic, or I know we mentioned a lot of different movies, books, but is there one that stands out, or tell people they got to run out, watch, read?
I mean, I have several.
Go for it.
War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells. I recommend everyone reread that. Look at the social commentary with that. I think movie-wise, it got a lot of crap, but I think the Will Smith I, Robot was actually well done. It had virtually nothing to do with the book.
It was one of the
robot novels.
Zeroth Law came out of, but I can't remember which one.
It'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, they borrowed, I think, a lot of different elements, but I thought in and of itself, it was good. Was the essence of what I think Asimov
The
was
idea.
trying to say. Yeah. And then also, I actually found out about this in college. Somebody suggested it in college, but it's a different take on 1984. It's a movie. It's called Equilibrium.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Okay. And
yeah, right.
I'd never heard of it, but yeah, that was an early,
see that one, yeah.
what's his name? Christian Bale
Yeah.
movie.
Ah,
was
okay.
really
I do
good.
know
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah, but I never knew that it was basically based on 1984. And then I saw it and I was like, I think it's a good take. That's what I have.
Yeah.
I've already mentioned Parable of the Sower, and then of course Parable of Talents, but
Twilight Zone.
actually quite a few Twilight Zones that touch on dystopia, like the one where his eyeglasses break.
That is.
Straight to dystopia.
We touched on a lot of that in the Apocalypse. Wow. But just recently, a friend of mine mentioned Station 11. So I read that. I read the book, and then we watched I'm not sure if that was like on HBO originally, but we watched the series, and they both are so good. They're very different. From one another, but they're just so good. So I love that. Yeah. Of course, Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never actually finished that show.
You know what? We didn't watch the last season. I think it just got
Hard to watch because of life.
yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to start off with the game BioShock. That one, it started with having a great civilization under the water, and it quickly all went to shit.
Was there a movie called BioShock? Because that sounds really familiar.
Not that I'm aware of. I
Okay.
feel like they want to make one, but then... And then movie, I would say Idiot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mike
Love that
Judge
movie.
film, just watched how the decline of man happened. It was just like humankind just went down without education, without actual going to the consumerism.
Right.
That's what plants crave.
Yeah. That's what they need.
Oh, also, I meant to bring this up too. Wall-E.
Oh,
Wall-E.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
But I feel like that would go along the lines as Idiocracy.
Yep.
Like the consumerism part is strong with this one. What about you, Joe? What do you got?
Yeah,
Let's suppress people even more.
I mentioned this, I think, in an episode a little bit, but I'm going to go Stephen King's The Stand. I think
I don't think you've ever mentioned this one.
No,
I
he
just
just
finished
reads-
reading
he
it again.
reads
I
it
read
every year.
it's almost every other year now because I get busy. But yeah, I think you do have the collapse. You go through all the side of the collapse, and then you do have the two, a good and an evil kind of civilization that comes up. And throughout the book, though, they do talk about these things about at what point when population gets too great, do you have to go to a republic? Do you have to switch? I mean, because at some point when it's small, you can have, one or a small group of people, and everyone will listen as you try to rebuild. But you get to a point where then people go, hold on, why do we need to listen to you? And it touches a lot of the stuff we talked about. And then I think from a movie standpoint, I just always go at The Matrix. I just think it has a lot of this stuff and in Gattaca.
Gattaca.
I just think Gattaca is fun. It does have these elements because you do touch upon, in both The Matrix and Gattaca, really touch upon technology reaching a point where it becomes a detriment and it's our downfall. And I think that's an interesting kind of...
Cautionary.
Yeah, definitely. Or think about the ethics, the morals, and things like that as we breach these barriers, which we will. We're just talking about CRISPR, things like that, or AI. So I think we're close, and then we will have these discussions about, because it's really easy, then you go to class separation, or machines then have some class, and then where do humans fit in that? So I think, yeah. But those are some I like. I think we named a bunch. All of these books, go read We, 1984, Brave New World. Those are the classics. Is it Piano Player? I am.
Yeah, I found that one article, the 30 best dystopian, and I think I've read like maybe 5 of them off that list.
I'll
But
put those on the
actually, then it was like, oh, that's
put that in the show
good.
note. Yeah, I think we.
But I just want to say, there's hope. It's like,
Yeah, I think that's what ties a lot of the stories together, and not just utopian and dystopian fiction, but a lot of fiction. I think it's always that kind of human nature, eventually good triumphs over evil.
And it's okay to break your dry January. It's okay.
No.
We here
Stay.
at Rabbit Hole of Research
I
approve.
mean, we understand.
There's a certain day I can think of that I'll probably be drinking.
Yeah.
So.
See, that's why I'm okay with it.
All right. With that note, we'll sign off. I think we went down
Another hole.
Many.
and some side holes. You got Joe,
You got Nick.
Nick,
Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia. We had our special guest Tina.
Thank you again for
joining
showing
us.
No,
Yeah.
thank you for having me.
Being
Yeah.
awesome.
Hanging out.
Yeah, a lot of
This
fun.
wasn't
Yeah.
a utopic experience.
That's much fun as you can have.
In the
talking
basement
about-
studio is a utopia. Utopia of fun. All right. I think that's it. So, see you later. And I love you.